It's August 23rd, 2010.
Middle of summer.
Exactly. Police are conducting a welfare check at a top-floor flat at 36 Alderney Street. That's in Pimlico, central London.
Because his colleagues hadn't heard from him, right?
Yeah, colleagues hadn't heard from the resident in over a week.
Yeah.
So officers enter the apartment, they make their way to the ensuite bathroom of the main bedroom, and they look inside the empty bathtub.
And what do they find?
Sitting right there in the tub is a red North Face sports bag. The zips are pulled shut, and it is padlocked from the outside.
On the outside?
Yes. And when they eventually open it, they find the decomposing, naked body of 31-year-old Gareth Williams.
I mean, I was looking through the background material on Gareth, and the contrast between his mind and the reality of this intelligence work, it's just striking.
Oh, absolutely.
He was a Welsh mathematics prodigy, taking his math exams early, and he graduated with a first-class degree from Bangor University when he was just 17.
Just 17, yeah.
And he goes on to become a top-tier codebreaker for GCHQ. At the time of his death, he is on a 3-year second pigament to MI6. But, I mean, what was his actual day-to-day life like?
Well, he was an intensely private individual.
Okay.
He was a keen cyclist, a fell walker, someone who preferred the outdoors to the bustling social scene of central London.
Right, not your typical spy movie character.
Not at all. Professionally, though, he was operating at the highest levels of cyber intelligence. He had recently attended high-level hacker conferences in the U.S. like Black Hat and DEF CON.
But he wasn't happy at MI6, was he?
No, the documentation shows he deeply disliked the culture there. He found the rat race and that intense post-work drinking culture really abrasive.
She was actually trying to leave.
Yeah, he was scheduled to leave London and move back to the quieter countryside in Gloucestershire just days after he was found. He was actively trying to get out.
Which brings us to the physical crime scene itself, which frankly seems to defy basic physics.
It really does.
I looked at the photos of that North Face holdall, and it just doesn't compute with the size of an adult man. What were the actual dimensions the police were dealing with?
The bag measured roughly 81 by 48 centimeters.
Wow.
Yeah, it's essentially a medium-sized gym holdall. The zips were pulled together, and the eyelets of the zippers were secured with a brass Yale padlock.
And the keys to that specific padlock were found inside the bag.
Underneath his body.
Underneath Gareth's body.
Right. That is the core physical impossibility the police had to untangle. They had to determine if a human being could physically put themselves into this specific bag and lock it from the inside in the exact manner it was found.
So they brought in experts.
They did. They brought in escapology and confined space experts, Peter Faulding and William McKay. Between them, they made 400 attempts to replicate the scenario using an identical bag.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the way they tested this wasn't just theoretical. They went to extreme lengths to recreate the exact biomechanics of the scene.
They absolutely did. McKay brought in a highly flexible assistant who practiced yoga and had a very similar build to Gareth.
Okay.
The assistant climbed into the bag, but the mechanics of trying to pull a zipper closed from the inside while contorted into a fetal position, it proved insurmountable.
Just from the angle of the arms.
Exactly. The angle prevents the necessary leverage. The assistant couldn't get the zip closed without it being incredibly painful. They actually ended up repeatedly damaging the zipper track in the process.
Wow.
And Faulding was even more definitive. After hundreds of attempts, his exact quote was that even Houdini would have struggled.
So what was his conclusion?
His professional conclusion was that Gareth was either placed in the bag unconscious or he was already dead before he was put inside.
Beyond the physical impossibility of the padlock, what about the medical reality of being zipped inside a bag like that? Let's say someone did manage to lock themselves in. How long could they survive?
Pathologist Ian Calder addressed this during the inquest. He explained the mechanics of hypercapnia.
Which is carbon dioxide poisoning, right?
Right. It's not just standard suffocation. Because that North Face bag was made of a non-breathable vinyl material, it created a rapid, closed-loop carbon dioxide environment.
So the air runs out fast.
Very fast. If Gareth had been alive and zipped himself in, the buildup of carbon dioxide would become toxic at an accelerated rate. He would suffer severe headaches, rapid confusion, and would lose consciousness within just 2 to 3 minutes.
2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah. And that rapid unconsciousness induces a soporific state, paralyzing any attempt to escape, which is followed swiftly by cardiac arrest.
That timeline is terrifyingly fast, but then you look at the environmental clues surrounding the bathtub, And the scene just gets stranger.
Oh, it gets much stranger.
For instance, this was August in London, yet the heating in Garrett's flat had been turned all the way up.
The elevated temperature massively sped up the decomposition of his body. It degraded the tissue to the point where the autopsy became incredibly difficult. It severely obscured potential toxicological evidence.
And I noticed in the police reports that his iPhone had been wiped to factory settings just prior to his death.
A completely wiped device in the possession of a senior cyber intelligence officer is a massive red flag.
Then there is the issue of fingerprints, or rather, the complete lack of them.
Right. Think about the biomechanics of lowering yourself into a bathtub. Then imagine trying to manipulate yourself into a duffel bag inside that same bathtub.
You'd have to brace yourself.
You instinctively have to touch the ceramic sides to balance your weight. You have to leave prints.
But there were none.
The bathroom was utterly devoid of fingerprints, not just the prints of an intruder. Even Gareth's own prints were nowhere to be found on the rim of the bath, the surrounding tiles, or the brass padlock itself.
That's chilling.
It heavily suggests the scene was manipulated or systematically cleaned.
So the investigators are looking at a locked bag, keys underneath the body, the heating cranked up in the summer, a wiped phone, and a sterile bathroom. But when they search the rest of his incredibly tidy apartment, they find items that seem totally at odds with his profile. What exactly did they catalog in the flat?
Investigators found roughly 25,000 pounds worth of pristine, unworn women's designer clothing.
25,000 pounds.
Yeah. We are talking high-end labels like Stella McCartney, Dior. They were immaculate, wrapped in tissue paper.
And the sizes?
Crucially, they were in small sizes 6 and 8, along with size 6 shoes. Gareth was a muscular man who could not possibly have fit into these garments.
Okay.
And alongside the clothing, they found bright orange and yellow women's wigs and brand new, unused makeup.
This specific discovery seemed to push the Metropolitan Police toward a highly controversial conclusion. Former Detective Chief Superintendent Hamish Campbell put forward a theory that Gareth's death was probably an accident. What was the basis for this pivot away from foul play?
Campbell pointed to a very specific piece of evidence, a semen stain found on the bathroom floor.
Which suggested what to them?
For the police, this suggested consensual sexual activity had taken place shortly before his death. Campbell's argument was that a violent assassination scenario wouldn't leave that kind of trace evidence.
I see.
He theorized that given Gareth's meticulous tidiness, the fluid must have been deposited the same day he entered the bag. To support this theory of a private sex game gone wrong, investigators highlighted an incident from his past.
The landlady.
Right. His former landlady in Cheltenham reported that 3 years prior, she and her husband found Gareth tied to his bedpost, screaming for help. He claimed he was just testing if he could get free. The police also noted he had a sporadic internet history of visiting bondage websites.
But looking at the sources, those visits to bondage sites were described as intermittent. It wasn't an obsession.
No, it wasn't.
And his childhood friend firmly rejected the idea that he was a cross-dresser, suggesting the clothes were likely intended as gifts. When the official inquest rolled around in 2012, Coroner Fiona Wilcox had a very different interpretation of the police's theory, didn't she?
What's fascinating here is how thoroughly Coroner Wilcox dismantled the autoerotic and cross-dressing theories. She conducted a rigorous inquest and pointed out a crucial detail. Gareth was found completely naked, not cross-dressed.
Right.
She noted his interest in bondage sites was so infrequent, it didn't indicate an active lifestyle that would escalate to this level.
And she had strong words about the media coverage, too.
Most significantly, she fiercely condemned the leaks about the cross-dressing to the press. She suggested these leaks were a deliberate attempt at media manipulation,
To distract people.
designed specifically to distract from the factual impossibilities of the crime scene.
She ultimately delivered a narrative verdict stating his death was unnatural and likely to have been criminally mediated.
Exactly. She was satisfied on the balance of probabilities that he was unlawfully killed by a third party. She relied heavily on the escapologist's evidence and the sheer lack of fingerprints.
But her inquest also shined a very harsh light on the behavior of the intelligence agencies themselves during the investigation.
It really did.
So what does this all mean? We have an active intelligence officer decomposing in a central London flat for over a week. How does MI6 not notice one of their top code breakers is missing for 7 days?
It highlights a really dangerous aspect of modern intelligence culture. You have individuals dealing with massive psychological pressure, handling highly classified material, Yet the compartmentalization is so extreme that a senior analyst can disappear for a week without a single alarm bell ringing.
He just vanished from work.
He missed critical meetings, and no one checked on him. That 7-day delay in a sweltering apartment led to the catastrophic loss of forensic evidence.
And didn't the tension between the murder detectives and the counterterrorism command become a major issue during the inquest?
That was one of the most concerning revelations. The Metropolitan Police's Counterterrorism Command, known as SO-15, acted as a liaison between MI6 and the murder detectives.
Okay.
It came out that SO-15 actually withheld 9 memory sticks and other property found in Gareth's MI6 office from the investigating detectives.
You're kidding. They just kept it from the murder squad.
The murder detectives didn't even know this evidence existed until the inquest began. Furthermore, SO-15 didn't take formal statements when interviewing Gareth's MI6 colleagues. It created a heavy cloud of suspicion regarding what the agencies were trying to protect.
Which naturally pivots the analysis toward the espionage angle. We have to look at what Gareth was actually working on.
Yes.
The reports indicate he was helping the NSA trace international money laundering routes, and the specific targets were Moscow-based mafia cells.
And when an intelligence officer is mapping the financial networks of Russian organized crime, they're dealing with incredibly dangerous adversaries who have a long history of retaliating on foreign soil.
Which points to a state-sponsored hit.
Exactly. In 2015, Boris Karpichkov, a former KGB agent who defected to Britain, came forward with explosive claims. Karpichkov stated his sources in Russia claimed the SVR was directly responsible for the murder.
The details from Karpichkov are incredibly specific. He claimed the SVR tried to blackmail Gareth into becoming a double agent, but Gareth pushed back, threatening to expose a Russian mole he had identified working inside GCHQ.
According to Karpichkov, that threat forced the SVR's hand. He alleged they assassinated Gareth using an untraceable poison slipped directly into his ear.
Into his ear?
Yes. This method would explain why the toxicology reports came back clean, especially after the accelerated decomposition. It's a theory that perfectly aligns with the missing fingerprints, the wiped phone, and the sterile nature of the bathroom.
It's professional.
It carries the hallmarks of a professional intelligence operation designed to look like an embarrassing accident.
Yet, the search for physical evidence to prove a third party was present has been a nightmare of errors. Let's look at the DNA evidence. During the initial investigation, the police thought they had a massive breakthrough with DNA found on Gareth's hand, but that turned out to be a massive false lead. What exactly happened there?
It was a devastating forensic contamination error by the private testing company LGC. A forensic scientist at the lab was working on an entirely unrelated case.
Okay.
However, an incorrect data entry code resulted in that scientist's DNA profile being mixed up and logged into the Gareth Williams file.
Oh, no.
The police spent immense resources chasing a phantom suspect, and it caused agonizing false hope for Gareth's family. LGC eventually had to issue a formal apology for the blunder.
And the attempt to find physical evidence hasn't stopped. Even recently, the Metropolitan Police conducted a new forensic review in 2024. What were they hoping to find with modern techniques?
They were applying advanced DNA profiling science to a single hair found at the scene that hadn't been fully analyzed before. The hope was that modern tech could extract a profile where 2010 tech failed.
Did they find anything?
The review yielded no new DNA. It provided no evidence of a third party. So from a purely forensic standpoint, the case remains entirely unsolved.